Welcome to Nami Live, your mental health community. I'm Susan Racher, board chair of Nami Miami-Dade, our local affiliate for Miami and the Keys of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the largest peer-to-peer mental health organization in the country. Today, our topic will be on teen and youth mental health. If you recall, our last program was aired just after the release of the Center for Disease Control Youth Risk Behavior Survey that indicated some alarming information about youth suicide ideation. We dedicated our last program to talking about NAMI's suicide prevention programs, including our evidence-based question, persuade, and refer, as well as our conference, Honest Talk About Suicide and Messages of Hope, which took place several weeks ago. I'm happy to tell you that with 380 registrants, with an amazing array of speakers, one of whom is with us today, and with media attention from Community News, the Miami Herald, CBS 4, and many more, the community opened its arms to shining a light on the taboo topic of suicide. And if you recall, NAMI's North Star is to normalize an open conversation about mental health and suicide ideation. Only through this open conversation can we encourage people to get support when they need it, and we can tell them how to get support and where. So joining me today to delve further into youth mental health are two amazing guests. Frank Zenere is a school psychologist and director of Miami-Dade Public Schools Crisis Management programs. Frank is a legend in youth mental health, having dedicated his career to counseling youth in our school system and to doing research on trauma and violence and the impact of those on youth long before headlines confronted us daily on the youth mental health crisis. Frank was also a featured speaker at our conference several weeks ago, and I am so delighted to welcome Frank and his insights, which have really informed a whole nation of school psychologists. Welcome to this program, Frank.
Thank you, Susan.
Kate Edelson is a colleague of mine at Nami Miami-Dade. Kate supports our Ending the Silence Youth Program, which we do in collaboration with Miami-Dade Public Schools and other community organizations. Miami-Dade Public Schools has embraced NAMI's programs, and their amazing mental health department, led by Sally Allion, have been great partners. Kate goes to middle and high schools in Ending the Silence and colleges and talks with youth about mental health education. Kate is also our walk manager. And one of NAMI's major initiatives is to universally open the conversation about mental health through our walk, through film festivals, through meetings, through panel discussions. And we will talk a little bit later about the importance of universal messaging like happy events like the walk with Kate. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you, Susan.
And thank you for being here. I often love to explore what brought you into this work. And Frank, you've dedicated your career to helping our kids and to counseling them, as well as to helping others understand how to be more effective with children. What brought you to this work?
At the age of 19, a close friend of mine died.
Oh, sorry.
And at that age, it was a very powerful life event that kind of put me in a dark place for a while. After I did recover somewhat from that loss, I found myself really interested in working with individuals that had been through either traumatic situations or perhaps even going through very difficult life circumstances. So I volunteered for hospice when they first came to Miami in the late 1970s. And working with them, I was assigned to a family who had a 14-year-old child who was dying from muscular dystrophy.
Oh my
And
goodness.
working with them over months, I became really engaged and was really appreciative of his outlook on life. He gave gratitude for all that he had in spite of what was going on with him.
So touching.
And lastly, a couple suicides of a colleague of mine and as well a friend of the family. All of those events coming together really fueled my passion for wanting to help out where suffering was occurring.
And that passion has had such a compelling impact on the community, and thank you for that. In some way, we're drawn into this work through our own life experiences, and I know, Kate, you are as well.
Yeah, very similar to Frank. I had a lot of experiences that brought me here. Starting as early as middle school, I would say I was surrounded by people who were often in mental health crisis and really had no idea. At one point in high school, one of my best friends growing up had undiagnosed schizoaffective disorder, and not the parents, not the school. No one understood what was going on or how to help him, and me and my friends would stay up all night, sometimes just to be with him. And it took a long time for him to get help. And then afterwards, when I went to college, I sort of ran into the same situations all over again. It just kept happening. I had to hospitalize my best friend and roommate when she had her first ever bipolar episode and couldn't sleep and was so scared that she started to contemplate suicide because she didn't know what to do. And it was after that and my own struggle with anxiety, depression, and self-harm that I realized that I really, really wanted to do something about this. And that's when I started volunteering at the Nami National Helpline in Arlington, Virginia. And it was there that I really started to get some answers. I received calls from people all over the United States, family members, peers, or those who have mental health conditions who were looking for support, who, like me, didn't know how to help the people that they cared about. And it was there that I was given resources that I could give to them. And every time I helped one of them, I felt like I was empowering myself and helping my loved ones as well. So it completely made sense that once I moved home back to South Florida, where I'm from, I found Nami Miami and was able to continue this journey of helping others and sort of helping myself along the way.
Thank you, Kate. You know, hearing our stories is so important. It's so important for the community because everybody experiencing a mental health challenge feels alone. And yet we know from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey I mentioned previously that we're not alone and that mental health issues are widespread. We just don't talk about it due to shame, due to stigma, due to taboos. I'd like to level set the conversation by just reminding the viewers of some of the data from that survey before we begin our conversation. Let's talk about the scope of the problem. Nationally, in 2021, 42% of all high school students, that's almost 1 out of 2, indicated that they felt hopeless or sad for more than 2 weeks, which is generally a benchmark for when attention needs to be paid to a mental health condition. 59% of females and a 69%, worrisome 69% of those in the LGBTQ community indicated sadness or hopelessness. Focusing on, and that's up 50% from a decade ago. Focusing on Florida, there were over 5,000 emergency department visits for mental health and suicide ideation in the state of Florida in 2021, and 1,300 hospitalizations. These are staggering numbers. Frank, why is this happening? Why is it up 50%? Why are our children so sad? What are you seeing in the school system?
Actually, this trend began before the pandemic and was just exacerbated by the isolation of that period of time. I look at several different indicators that kind of make sense to me as to why we're seeing what we're seeing. One is social media. I feel strongly that for a select group of students who are vulnerable, that their dependency on social media for approval or lack of, body shaming episodes, all of these types of issues around popularity have led many students to feel certainly disillusioned and can also become quite sad, if not actually depressed. Social skills deficits. Versus 10 years ago, students today are much less likely to be part of clubs, athletic teams, as well as just going out with their peers for an episode, an evening, an activity.
Is that because of the pressure of academics, or are there some other reasons for
I
that?
think it's academics as well as certainly social emotional issues that are contributing. We also see parenting strategies coming to play. We all want to protect our children from risk, but at some point we have to teach our children to learn how to self-regulate strong emotions for life events they're going to face, and let them make some mistakes, let them make some choices and learn from them as best possible. So those are several of the main issues that I see that are contributing, as well as the 24-hour news cycle. Most media has a negative news bias,
Right.
and
Right.
you absorb only so much of that without yourself being brought down. So those are some of the different criteria I see as being kind of complicit in this whole process of the level of sadness we're seeing currently.
Wow. So lack of clubs and sports and playtime, social
Yes.
media,
Parental strategies.
not letting kids fail.
Right. And again, exposure to the
The
negative
negative
news
news
bias.
cycle constantly beating on us
Yeah,
24/7.
when we talk about the gun violence issue, political concerns, climate change,
Very
there's so
important
much out there.
points. Very important points. And I relate to the parenting strategy. It's the hardest thing
It is.
to tell your child that it's okay to fail, learn from it. We all want to protect. And Kate, your exposure to our students in the district through your Ending the Silence presentations has given you some insight into this as well. What do you hear from them?
So from the students, I hear a lot of different things, but honestly, it comes back to the same thing that I experienced, which is really just a lack of education. One of the most recent Ending the Silence presentations I did for high schoolers, a young girl was drawing me the entire time, and she had done a bunch of different drawings of me and her, because I had talked in my presentation about my personal experience with disordered eating, which is something that we know is super common in young women especially. And I had mentioned something that I thought most people knew, but as someone in the mental health field, I maybe didn't realize it. But I had mentioned that medication might not work if you're not eating. And this young lady was on medication and had an eating disorder. And in her drawing, she put a picture of her sort of going like this, sort of looking ashamed, not realizing that her medication might not be working because she wasn't eating enough. So, we hear a lot from the students, and I've seen a lot of difference between now post-pandemic and before the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, I was hearing from students about self-harm. Oftentimes when you open up about your own story, the students will come through and share what they're going through, and I talk about self-harm in my story, and I can't tell you how many students come up to me either saying that this is something that they struggle with, or that they have a friend that is struggling with that as well, and that they don't know how to approach that because the friend has made them promise not to say anything. And that's when we encourage them, we know it's hard to break a promise to a friend, but you might actually save their life. You don't know what they're going through. You got to tell a trusted adult.
Vital message for young people. Friends usually know more about what's going on with other friends
Absolutely.
than the families, or teachers, or clinicians.
Absolutely.
Vital message.
So they're going through a lot. And I remember going through a lot as well. And the one thing that I think would have made all the difference back then and would make all the difference now is just the education about it. Because ultimately, my parents had no idea what I was going through, and they didn't know how to recognize the signs of self-harm, but they were certainly there. And same thing with the schools. They would also be able to know this if they just knew the warning signs. So that's why I love Ending the Silence, because it not only just educates the students, and that is important, but I think educating the families is almost more important, which is something we do as well in English and in Spanish. So I think we really need to let the parents know what to look out for, because my parents didn't know, and it's not their fault that they didn't know. It was just something new that they'd never encountered before.
Right, and stigma and shame are really are issues that still to this day are huge barriers to people getting the help they need, and that is really a North Star for what we do. Nami, we at Nami are not clinicians. We talk, we talk, we share stories, we educate. I certainly. Am committed to that, because when my son became ill 11 years ago, we were clueless. And I wish then that I knew what NAMI members who attend our programs know, because I could have been much more effective. I could have been much earlier in reaching help. And so that's very, very important. What what ideas or what's happening in the schools as it relates to this issue of stigma and shame and encouraging the students and their families? Sometimes it's the families that are reluctant to seek help. They don't want it on the record. They don't want to label their children. They well-meaning, but interfering with getting help.
Yes, we've rolled out a number of initiatives in recent years, including the standardized, mandated mental health awareness curriculum that our students in grades 6 through 12 must be exposed to every school year. We have mental health clubs. We certainly have other specialty programs like Solid Minds, Solid Athletes. When we look at talking about healthy youth development as well as emotional development in general. These are important pieces.
Really important.
Bullying prevention curriculum, because we know there is a connection between bullying and suicide. It's not a causal factor, but it is a contributing factor that we must recognize. We have SEL Strong roundtables throughout the year where our mental health staff gets together with students and talk about issues coming out of the pandemic that were especially difficult for them.
Wonderful.
Youth mental health first aid courses for all of our staff, and teen mental health first aid for high school students, taught by high school students that have been receiving special training.
Great.
So just some of the initiatives that we have in place to cut through the stigma, to talk about how mental wellness is connected to physical wellness. They're one and the same. They are inseparable.
And connected to community wellness as well.
Absolutely.
And have you seen results and impact? It sounds like you have a wonderful portfolio of programming.
Yes.
Shine that light on the conversation.
There are definitely positive outcomes that we're seeing. The education and the awareness level is at a much higher pace than it has been previously. We still have a ways to go and more people to gain awareness in order to really cut through, again, the strong level of stigma that we know exists in society towards mental wellness and mental illness.
Stigma and also education. You know, many times mental health conditions appear as either physical conditions or subtle changes in an individual's friendships, academic work, sleep habits, eating habits, and so forth. And it's really important to educate people, everybody, grandparents,
Absolutely.
parents, employers, teachers, that these may be sowing oats growing up, and give them a little space, or it may be something that needs to be focused on. And that's something that's very important to me as a parent and now a grandparent. And Kate, talk now a little bit about the universality of messaging and how important it is, and why NAMI does a walk, and what is important about our walk.
Absolutely. So, I mean,
And I love your new walk T-shirt.
Oh,
Show
thank
everybody
you.
that
Yes.
This is the 2023 walk T-shirt.
Yes, I love the bright colors. I think it's really beautiful, and it stands out really perfectly. There's a little sneaker here because, of course, we're walking for mental health awareness. And, you know, we've been talking a lot about the stigma, which is, of course, something that we all have to fight, whether it's dealing with other people's stigma or even our own. You know, sometimes it can be hard to admit that we have a problem or that we're scared, or just even really saying out loud what it is that we're going through. So the idea is to make it as easy as possible, to remove those barriers to care, to make it really easy to be like, you know what, I've seen a lot of other people go through this. This is kind of normal. Like, I can talk about this. We know at least 1 in 5 Americans deal with a mental health condition. After the pandemic, it was 1 in 3 adults who had anxiety or depression. But we also saw that 50% more of adults were more willing to talk about their mental health. So we're really making progress, and it's important that we keep pushing forward and that we don't leave people behind so that they can get that help. And, you know, there are a lot of different communities that are still a little bit behind, that aren't getting those resources, and where it's still very, very stigmatized. So the idea is that, you know, the more people that we can get into this movement, the better, because that way we can reach everybody. And so that's why a walk for mental health awareness is so important, so key to spreading the message loud and proud for everyone to hear, letting the schools know that we're doing this, letting the parents know that we're doing this, but also our elected officials, our law enforcement, everybody, so that we can reach all of the people who are affected by mental health conditions. And we know that it's a lot. So the Walk for Mental Health Awareness is really an amazing way for everyone to gather on May 20th to share the message of hope, that they are not alone, and that we're all in this together. And there are a lot of places where you can get help, which is one of the biggest problems too. And one of the best things about the walk is that we have all the mental health resources in one place, and people just need to show up on that Saturday morning and talk to all of the different sponsors and community partners who are there to provide resources.
When you see 1,000 or 2,000 people and marching band from Norland and other, the Heat dancers and other amazing community leaders as well, it really lifts up the message and helps people understand that this is a totally normalized conversation. You can get help. You could participate. It could be joyful. There are many people living well with mental health challenges. Most people actually live well with mental health challenges. And absolutely wonderful event. May 20th. How does somebody connect with us, Kate, if they want to participate as a team or be a sponsor?
So one way they can sign up is at namiwalks.org/Miami. You can start a team as a team captain, or you can join my team. You can also just join as a participant, and there's no fee to register. Anyone who wants to be a part of the walk can do so for free, but if they want to, they can start a team, start a fundraiser, and invite people to join by sharing the link. You can also call us at 305-665-2540 to learn more and reach us at our office about the walk, about our free resources, and everything that's going to be going down on May 20th at Lone Depot Park, home of the Miami Marlins.
Thank you. I will be there with my green shoes on. And having a community event with the table and the resources is very essential. Also communicating with our viewers on what are the resources, how do they access resources, is something that we do on every show, and that is really important. Most people don't know where to go to get help. So Frank, in the school system, I recently noted that you've extended your hours in terms of the mental health department and the clinicians that are available. How does a parent engage and connect with resources in the public school system?
Sure. One of the main lines of help is to go to the school counselor. We have at least one school counselor in every building across the county.
Wonderful.
And over 1,000 school mental health professionals district-wide. Our mental health coordinators are certainly out at schools several days a week, as we have school psychologists and school social workers and other clinicians. But seeking out the school counselor initially to not only address what the concerns are, but to get resources for throughout the county, as well as our parent helpline that we spoke about briefly there at 305-995-7100. Open 7 days a week now, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
7 days.
7 days.
Okay, let's repeat that number.
Sure.
305.
305-995-7100. And the information can be about what services are available within the schools as well as in the community.
Thank you that's an amazing resource. At Nami Miami, we also have resources. As Kate mentioned, everything we do is free. We have support groups for family members. We have support groups for individuals living with mental health conditions. Please invite us to present Ending the Silence for Youth or Ending the Silence for Families at your community center, your scout troop, your faith community, as well as our evidence-based Question, Persuade, and Refer, which is a suicide prevention program. 90 minutes, and it will be the best 90 minutes that you as employers, as family members, as teachers, as friends will invest in. It's a fabulous program. We can be reached at namimiami.org. I also want to make folks aware of a couple of other resources. Thriving Mind South Florida is our managing entity, one of 7 managing entities tasked by the state of Florida to provide mental health and substance use services for Miami-Dade and Monroe counties. Thrivingmind.org, you can get a lot of information from there, as well as they too have a consumer phone line that they answer and will advise you as to resources. Finally, in 2020, legislation established a 3-digit phone number for mental health and suicide crisis. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline was changed to 988. It's answered by Jewish Community Services, by trained individuals. And if in doubt as to whether you need help, where to get help, feel free, 988. It's answered in English and Spanish, and those are amazing resources. Finally, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will have 4 mobile response units in Miami-Dade. It is a major game changer for mental health resources. We will establish and have the phone number that you need to call on our website, namimiami.org, and on Thriving Minds website, because this is very, very important. If in doubt and you believe that you or someone you love is having a mental health crisis, please call one of these numbers. We have resources in the community, and people just don't know how to enter them. But I know with the schools, as well as Thriving Mind and Nami, we all have a no wrong door policy. Reach out, and someone will be there to help you. It's absolutely essential. Nobody should have to suffer alone or in silence. We have the resources in this county and in an amazing mental health department in the school district. And you're having a conference at the end of the month, I understand, and
Yes.
that will be wonderful and extremely informative for the community.
Agreed. The Mental Health Forum, I think, is going to go a long way to having a countywide plan put into action.
I'm very happy about that. And the numbers indicate that we desperately need it. So as we're concluding our session, I want to give you an opportunity for some, final remarks. Kate, do you want to start? I'll pass the baton to you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, it can be really complicated to start your own mental health journey. Maybe you're watching this, or maybe you've been to an ETS or something like that, and you're wondering, okay, this is speaking to something a problem that I know I'm experiencing. Where do I get started? So I actually called the Nami helpline when my friend was in crisis, and it wasn't until later that I ended up volunteering there. But I really needed to talk to somebody. Mm-hmm. And for those who are hurting, for those who are scared, if you're a family member, maybe you suspect that someone close to you is not doing well, don't be afraid to reach out. It's scary, but there's no wrong way, like you said, to go. Mm-hmm. You can call us or any of our community partners, and we're just going to be there to guide you. There's no price. Everything we do is free, and it's not like it's going to go on record or anything. Everything we do is confidential. So if you're looking to take that first step, please do it. Please reach out to other people, because I really wish that I had, and I wish my friends who were in crisis were able to say something sooner. And the more of us that stand up and say, you know what, it's okay to do that, the more I think people will do it. So I really just want people to understand that they are not alone, that they can take that step and move forward to help themselves and the people they love.
I can't agree more, and I wish that I had known that too, and I'm happy I finally learned. Frank?
Yes, I'd like to close with mentioning that recently one of my colleagues was going through some boxes in her closet and found this People magazine from 1985.
I was going to say the hairstyles.
Yes.
That can't be from recently.
No, not at all. When teen suicide is the prominent article.
Wow.
And I'd like to read just a very short excerpt. It talks about at this time in 1985 that the figures were shocking. About 5,000 young people commit suicide according to the National Center for Health Statistics. Recent research indicates that 500,000 more attempt to do so. How can teen suicides be prevented? Experts agree that the most effective means of prevention is education. So here we are 38 years later, still preaching the message of awareness and education. We can and must do better in promoting mental health awareness And if a mental health condition should emerge, to have the resources and support to surround our children and teens so they will not suffer needlessly and not certainly have any disabilities in navigating their environment so they can enjoy their lives like everyone deserves.
Oh, and I feel so hopeful because with the partnerships that we have, the school system and your department and Thriving Mind and Nami and some of our amazing community partnerships, we're starting to get that messaging out. And I'd like to also recognize Thriving Mind and the Department of Children and Families, for whom this messaging is really important. And without their support, NAMI couldn't do its education awareness and suicide prevention program. And so I challenge everyone in the audience, we're three of us and a broader community are ending the silence about mental health. You can do your job to do that as well by connecting with NAMI, by forwarding information, by having an open attitude and communication with friends and people you love, and recommending that people who are feeling unwell get help when they need it, and directing them to the resources that we spoke about when they need it. We all have a role in this to open that conversation, to improve education, and to make sure those headlines go away.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Community News for hosting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.